What up, y'all? What's happening? It is your main Mickey Flicky back in the building once again. The song talking this Vinland Saga stuff. So right now I'm talking the season recap for season two. So I hope y'all really checked out season one, or if you haven't already, that is, because these have kind of been out. But if you saw my last episode, we talked about season one. We talked about Thor's. We talked about Thorfinn as a youth growing up, and seeing all this violence, seeing all this hate, and it changes him. And I feel like it changes him for the better because, well, let's so he ends up getting bought as a slave to the Kettle family. Lord Kettle decides to purchase him and bring him home, for lack of a better phrase, uh, and that's that's awesome because it gives him a place to start over. It gives him a place to figure out who he is and his purpose, and he actually does that. To his credit, he figures out that killing is no longer his bag. He's got this friend named Einar. Now, Einar is poor Einar. Just, at the end of the day, poor Einar. Einar was a youth who his family was killed by the by English soldiers. And so his family, meaning his mother, well, his father was killed years prior. And so his mom and daughter, and excuse me, his mom and sister were killed while they were trying to escape their village being burnt down. So he ends up being a slave, and they end up on the same farm. Uh, and it's because of him and his ordeals that it reminds Thorfinn of humanity again. And that is key. That is key for him. Because without that, he has no idea what it is that he ever wants to do. So Lord Kettle has this farm, this major farm. So he has Einar and Thorfinn clear a forest to create farmland to plant crops and all that. And once they have completed their task and completed other tasks that bring him money, he literally is freeing them after 3 years. And it's kind of like a sharecrop situation, but when it actually works out for the betterment. So he's actually a good dude. The only problem with Lord Kettle is that he has a weak ass son named Omar, who ends up getting yeah, there's a lot when Omar and him, because Omar is one of them dudes that his dad's got a name. His older brother Thorgil is a soldier, and he is actually a soldier in King Canute's army. And Omar wants he wants the props. He wants the props. He wants the props. But he's a self-entitled little Bama, so he doesn't have skills. He's more of a whiny person and all of that. So at the end of it, what this season is about is two things. It's about excuse me. My dog is going crazy, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize. It's about Thorfinn finding redemption, and it's about Canute and the terrible curse of the crown and how it changes him and If there's any redeeming factors, who knows? You got to see. You got to see. I believe so, but I don't want to spill too early. So the main crux of this also is King Canute is a shicey dude, man. Because of the crown, and his father told him the curse of the crown. It'll make you do things to keep the crown. He poisoned his father. Well, actually, no. He plotted to have his father killed by, Askeladd. But his brother Harold, who actually genuinely has love for him and he has love for Harold, he poisoned Harold so that he could be the one and only king. Wow. So, in doing so, now they are cash strapped and he has to run two kingdoms. And he knows if he imparts taxes, then the country of Denmark is going to revolt, similarly to what almost happened in England when he imposed taxes there. He has a whole army of Danish in England that he has to pay for because he thinks he needs them there to maintain his power. So now he's got to figure out a new way to earn funds. What better way than to take the rich people of your own constituency and take their farms and land and money from them and do that? So Lord Kettle happens to fall right on the king's list. And they use Omar to do it. So Omar ends up getting his pride hurt, and he takes out his anger on the king's guards, which actually was all a setup. The king knew it was going to happen, and they used that as the excuse to bring his army down to the Kettle farm and attack. And the goal is to get the Kettle family to be exiled and move off of the land so that the army can take it and work it and keep the funds going for the kingdom. And war does indeed break out, and it's ugly and it's sad. And the one thing that was not expected happens. Thorfinn is there. Is he going to go and attack and do crazy things with all of that strength and military prowess and skill that he has? No. He finally figures out what his father was trying to tell him all along. And in his own way, becomes a pacifist. Coolest part of this thing was he took 100 punches from this big, strong soldier. And he's like, listen, if I take these 100 punches, will you let me go see the king? And he was like, you know what? Yeah. Because he told him who he was. He said, I'm Thorfinn. I used to be an intendant, and nobody believed him. So he's like, all right, I will go through this test. And at the end of this test, if I pass it, you'll send me along. So it happens. It goes through. I mean, dude got mollywopped so bad, yo. I felt so bad for him. But by the time it was done, the person who was hitting him, the 100th punch was a little light tap to the chest. He understood and he apologized. It was really dope scene. It was a really excellent scene. And so now the thing is, while all this is going down, the king knows that Thorfinn is over there. But he's like, nah, I won't see him until this. So he sees him, they talk, and the king realizes that Thorfinn not only has matured and grown up, but that he has changed completely, and his path is no longer the one wrought with violence and bloodshed that had once been. The person that the king knew was no longer in front of him. And he looked at it and he calculated. He was like, I guess 4 years is long enough for a person to really change. I guess so. And he was still adamant about taking the Kettle farm up until the end of the conversation. And at the end of the conversation, there was an understanding and almost a reverence for both of them. Like the king actually had reverence for Thorfinn and vice versa. The king decides he's not going to take the kettle farm. They leave, and instead, he pulls the Danish army from England. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes the English happy. It makes the English think that he trusts them finally. And so he doesn't lose anything with the English. He doesn't lose England. He maintains the strength of England and maintains Denmark without having to circumvent them to taxes. Literally, just by pulling his army, he solved this whole problem. And it took Thorfinn talking to him, not violence, no attack, talking to him for him to realize that. Like, yeah, I enjoyed that. That was dope. I like how that went down. I really do. So, as we did with the other one, here's the recap, and let's hit it. Dun, dun, dun. Yo, and the animation was dope here. You know what I mean? So you got the dead man's guilt because of the curse of the crown. Now he's reminiscing on him and his big brother. The same kid he poisons, like the same man he poisons. It's crazy. And he starts seeing visions of his dad as a decapitated head, giving him advice and stuff. Yo, Canute, because of his treachery, has guilt and all kinds of stuff, and he can't really, maintain himself the way he wants to because of that. So now we have Iron Fist Kettle and Einar I was talking about. Two really good dudes. Like I said, Thorfinn and Einar they were slaves, and this is the slave owner, well, the land owner giving them, good advice and letting them know that they'll be free, So, and it's like I said, at the same time, inner trials and redemptions were going on with Thorfinn. I mean, he even goes into purgatory, and like sees Askeladd and Bjorn and all these other warriors that are just in this hell, just constantly fighting and dying and being reborn to fight and die all over again. And it's just madness. And Askeladd is like, bruh, I don't even know why you back here. You got out of this. Stay out of this. This is not for you. He literally becomes his mentor, and maybe always was, but you still killed his dad, so you still suck. But you know what I mean? So there's a lot with that. And again, heavy is the crown, he's sitting there thinking about attacking the kettle farm. And this is where he really starts to understand. Well, this is where they come to a head and they start to understand. So as you see, Omar right here plays the fool in front of these folks and ends up getting everybody hemmed up. So now they got a plan because they know the king is coming, and here he is, ready to do battle. Notice his helmet is different, but now you got the kettle owner fighting. And again, Omar's courage. Omar decided that he wanted to give up and surrender so that, they could save the farm. And as I went into detail with the 100 punches, like, again, this was really dope. So at the very end, they earned their freedom, and Leif never gave up. He finds him, and he brings Thorfinn home, and Thorfinn finally gets back to the house. He sees his mom and his sister and everything, and they decide at the very end that, they want to go find this Vinland, this Newfoundland, this place that has peace, this place that has no wars and no kings have reached their lands and XYZ. So it ends on a very hopeful note. And like I said, I don't know if season 3 will be out next year or the year after or what have you, but I will definitely jump back into that season when it comes. This was a very good ride. I enjoyed it. It wasn't very long, maybe 20 plus episodes. And like I said, only 2 seasons. So I ate it up in a weekend. It wasn't nothing. But it was a great, I enjoyed Vinland. Now, I will say Vinland was, it reminded me of Kingdom in the fact that if you don't know what old timey war and warfare looks like, it will shock you just how violent and aggressive and with the looting and raping and pillaging, like that was normal place, not just for the Vikings, but also for a lot of those who conducted warfare in that time. It's just what it was. They didn't even see anything wrong with it for the most part, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting. So listen, hey, if you guys like historical fiction anime, definitely check out Vinland Saga. It was dope. And we will talk. Peace.